Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Danielle Gaudette. Welcome to the show, Danielle, and thank you for making time for us today. We're recording this on Thanksgiving, which is nothing in the UK, but it's a big thing in the US, clearly. So I really appreciate you making the time for us today.
Thanks, Simon. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So Danielle's an adoptee. She's also an author. I've been listening to her book, a great book. It's called The Healing Tree. And it's a lot of the book is about Danielle's learnings as she's been in reunion with a birth mother, which has been 24 years now. Mm. So, you know, we hear of honeymoon periods that then go awry, shall we say. We hear of reunions that don't work out right from the start. But when I heard that Danielle had been in reunion 24 years, I thought that would be a great topic to kind of explore. That was before I listened to a book, and great that you've done an audiobook. Just on a side note, Danielle, because it's not out yet, right? So Danielle gave me early access to some recordings of it, but I know there's a big cost involved in audiobooks. I really think they rock my world, right? Because I only read when I'm on the beach.
Yeah.
But I listen to audio a couple of hours a day. So that makes it super accessible, and also makes it it makes you stand out because there's not that many adoptee memoirs on audio books. So yeah.
I'm excited. It could be out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, cool. So 24 years in reunion.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So what can you say? How can you sum up 24 years of learning in an hour's podcast? I don't know quite where to start. To what extent, you know, like to what extent has it met your expectations? Maybe an interesting place to start. Or was there a huge yearning within you? Like what drove it before the
yeah. So that's really the interesting thing, because I didn't have any expectations, because I didn't have a huge yearning. That wasn't my beginning. I know everybody has a different story. Mine was more of a curiosity. I was very close with my parents, and I felt that I wasn't looking for another relationship. I wasn't looking for another family. I felt that cultivating that relationship seemed stressful to me, because I had such a deep connection and loyalty to my mother and my father. It just didn't have a place in my heart. It didn't make sense. But of course, there was a curiosity. There was a missing piece about me. So in college, it was really in my second year of college, when I was really kind of just getting settled with myself, sort of in my own skin in life. I was about 20 years old when I thought, you know, I'd like to see if I can get some information, because also in college is when, you know, my world opened up and I met all kinds of new people. And then everyone's always asking, oh, where are you from? What is your heritage? You know, what's so funny? Just the other day, I met someone who asked me that. I was taking a salsa class and they asked me that question. And it's just been an ongoing question, whether it's something about my hair or something, that people are always like, oh, and they just start guessing and throwing their ideas. And I didn't know for my whole life up till that moment. And I just felt missing. everybody else seemed to know it. It also felt like it set me apart from other people. So it made me feel a certain loneliness or difference between myself and others. So that's that's how it really started. I was settled, I was ready. I'm going to write a letter to the Catholic Charity Bureau, where I was adopted through them in Manhattan, New York. I'll write them a letter. I'll see if I can get some information, maybe some pictures, so I can see where does this face come from and what is my heritage, because I didn't have that information prior. So that was how it started. So there wasn't a huge expectation of a relationship. So that's why the past 24 years have been a journey of being thrown into something that I didn't expect was going to happen. And I was really thrown right into the deep end, because it turned out that she was also looking for me. So we found each other very easily. It just took a couple steps, maybe 8 months altogether, of a couple of very easy steps, which I write about. Ultimately, the International Soundex Reunion Registry matched us because we were both members. We both filled out the information and became members. Yeah. So it was so fast.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was so fast. And I these days, as I keep sharing my story, I feel like I knocked on the door just like casually, and the door flew open and I kind of landed on my face. So the past 24 years has been getting up off the ground and facing this relationship and facing myself and trying to navigate my way through it, because I also talk about this in the book a little bit. It was really after the reunion where I felt my own wound. Prior to that, I was not so aware of that kind of feeling. I was just living my life. And it was after the reunion. It seemed that the reunion and everything that came with my relationship with my birth mother, I was meeting the wound inside of me through that.
Yeah. So this is an area that fascinates me, actually. I was thinking about this this week, because I'm writing my book too, at the moment. And it's that I said this on the podcast I did a couple of days ago. I should have checked out the guy who said it, I think it was a Freud thing, something like, until we make the subconscious conscious, it will rule our life and we will call it fate, something like that. Do you remember it? Do you remember it more clearly than that?
I don't remember it exactly, but I've heard something similar to that in different ways, and that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I think it's that, but we accept that as the truth. So I don't know how true that is, and will we ever know? Because it's my own coming out of the fog, as people say, and who knows, right? It's just it's a phrase that a lot of people use, coming out of. Do you use that word?
This is a new phrase to me. I've never heard of it before, but if I were to apply it to my own life, I suppose I was just living in the fog with another set of issues related to my adoptive parents and just my own emotional world, but in the fog related to how adoption was really affecting me deep inside. And then I suppose I came out of the fog after meeting with after the reunion, and then the unraveling of the last 24 years, but really intensively, I would say, for about 10 to 15 plus years.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I was thinking, so if we believe this, until we make the subconscious conscious, it will. It's like it's always there, but it just hasn't surfaced. That seems to be the way that most people think. When I had my coming out of the fog thing, I was thinking, well, was it always there? And to what extent was it? Like I was bullied at school. Nothing to do with adoption. a few other things happened as a kid that were, again, nothing to do with adoption. And like, to what extent is it that, or to what extent is it the primal? We kind of like we'll never know. I mean, for me, it was like early 40s. I was having a tough time business wise, and maybe this teddy bear thing just pushed me over the edge, right? So it wasn't. So I don't know if I'm expressing this clearly, right? So was it always there and it surfaced, right? Which is the perceived wisdom in most circles, right? Or was it just, there's a buildup of other stuff, other issues. You've told other issues. I had other issues, right? And then this thing just tips. It's just the straw that broke the camel's back, and it was a totting. So it's a totting up thing rather than something that was always there. And this really intrigues me, because old people suppress stuff, and we keep this stuff all buried, and then it comes out, and that's the scientific kind of as I say, the perceived wisdom. And at the same time, scientists used to think that the earth was flat.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
Have you got a take on that? What would you?
Yeah, well, what I would say from my own experience, because I've done, so much of this mind, body, spirit work and energy training, where what that really gave to me was the ability to go inward and feel myself, feel my feelings, and kind of let my consciousness drop into the feeling, and deeper and deeper and deeper, so I could kind of get down deep to the roots of things. And many times I would find that I kept being able to trace my present moment, my present day struggle, emotion, turbulence. I could trace it down to some life issue. Now, whether that life issue is connected to my childhood, right, or a primal wound, is not completely clear, except that that's what it sort of felt like inside of my psyche, that there had been something numb and blind, and it started melting through my reunion. And then now I could feel intensely this deep, deep insecurity was a really big one. Some sense of myself that was broken, that was not traceable back to the way my parents raised me. Like the story in my mind, if I would feel into myself and get real quiet and hear what the voice was saying, the unreliable narrator was saying, it was saying something that didn't make any sense in my present life. For instance, which I write about in the book, you're so bad, because the other boy in kindergarten won the raffle and I didn't win. It really was like, you don't deserve to exist on this planet. You're that bad. You're just that worthless. And then none of that relates to any bad memories of my childhood. My parents just loved me. They showered me with praises and affection. So that's when I started to feel they don't connect to a memory. It's just a sense of self. So through feeling in like that, I do feel they were in there. Those feelings, those beliefs were unconscious, and then they started to become conscious.
Okay. Yeah. So listeners, I've spoken to a lot of people for the podcast, like 210 odd. I don't know how many people we did now, at what episode we're on. I should know, shouldn't I? Anyway, yeah. I didn't tell you this. This is the first time. I had a great conversation the other week. A lady, she's coming on the podcast. she went on a 4,000-mile road trip around the States, and she listened to every single episode of the Thriving Adoptee. And I'm like, wow, great. Because I don't listen back to them. I hate the sound of my own voice, right? So yeah, that issue. So yeah, as I say, I've spoken to a lot of people in terms of like, and I think I've done quite a lot of work in this area. But I must say to you listeners, like Danielle has got the like the gold star for the deepest digger into the truth, right? And like, I really respect that. I really respect the time and stuff that you put in, because like, when we met, whenever it was, a month or so ago, I just thought I met a kindred spirit in somebody that's really done their inner work, and she's done quite different inner work to me, and in a different way. It's very holistic. You've been in, and this is all in the book, so we don't need to go over it, but like you've been in a very deep place. Oh yeah, the stuff that, one of the things that from the book you did, what was she was a financial advisor, a pension inheritance tax selling, consultant or something, who also does past life regression, and that's one of, sorry,
not past life regression. It was
sorry,
Akashic record reading.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not.
I'm not. No.
When the records are open, sometimes they give you past life reading. Sometimes they give you other just kind of messages about your soul's path. But yeah, that particular moment of life, she gave me a reading, a past life reading about me and my birth mother.
Yeah. So nobody's gone deeper than Danielle. So hat off to you for that. And it is very different to the stuff that I've done. Like we've trodden slightly different paths. So some of the stuff, is completely new to me. One of the things that really leapt out, and I mentioned this before we started recording, was you talked about the untarnished soul, right? So how does the kind of the primal wound and the untarnished soul, how do they sit together? What is the untarnished soul about? Please, share your take on that, because that really leapt out at me. Untarnished soul. I thought, that's what I want.
You have an untarnished soul.
Sorry?
You already have an untarnished soul. That was my awakening, right? To go in and meet with my own, feel and find and discover the light of my own untarnished soul. And that takes it to a very spiritual conversation, right? But honestly, for me,
let's go there.
That is the critical piece in my healing of my, so-called primal wound, because the primal wound, as I understand it from reading the primal wound, and also when I read it, it clicked with what I was experiencing inside of me, which is this, she put it so well. She said something like an energetic rift, right? So we're physically outside of the birth mother, but there's been an energetic rift, so that this affects our psychology. Like our arm didn't get cut off, we grew physically completely, but energetically, psychologically, there's something that was incompleted by that severance. That's what she was saying. And that's what I felt when I talked about that blind spot. And then what can you do about that, right? What can you do about that? Then that puts you in a really, I felt, a victim position, because I can't change my birth and relinquishment. I can't change that in this lifetime on the physical realm, right? So that's just something I have to feel, I have to face, I have to bring it into conscious awareness so that it doesn't control me, right? I have to come into more controllability of it. But But even that wound, even that relinquishment experience, and all the whatever rejection, abandonment, betrayal issues that ensued in my psychology, anyway, it cannot touch that soul, that untarnished. That's why I use the word untarnished. It in the spiritually, there has been no harm done. There's no wound there. Spiritually, I'm completely intact. This essence is there, living, breathing within me. That is the place where I'm whole. If I can bring my consciousness and align with it, I can feel that. If not, I'm, doing the dance and the wrestling match with all the fragmented pieces. But when I can align and feel that untarnished soul, that's where peace is, true peace and healing, because everything is perfect and okay, and there's no difference between me and anyone, and just the life force that animates the planet. There's no difference. So it was a huge healing to meet that place, and it was so precious to me that I kind of just dedicated my life really to cultivating it and growing it and wanting to get closer to it and nurture it and let it become big, and I wanted to become it, really, like let my life be filled with that light. Yeah.
So this, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to do any PC things, but however you identify yourself, non-binary, all that sort of stuff, right? This is why I knew that Danielle was going to be a superb guest on the podcast, right? Because that's it, right? We've gone different ways to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to take you back about 5 minutes. So I said, I want that. I want that untarnished soul. Yeah. And you said, you already have it. So here's the good news, listeners. You already have it too. You are it. You are it. Because we are not our psychology. We are not our psychology. So my take on that, my take is that in my opinion, is that the primal wound is psychological. It's not you can't cut the soul or tarnish soul.
That's right. Yeah, the essence remains.
The essence remains, the essence of who we are. So the essence, it's more fundamental. It's more fundamental than our psychology. The essence, it's if the essence is the ground floor, and psychology is the first floor.
That's right. And I think I feel like you're talking about something very interesting, an interesting point, which I think we spoke about before as well, which is identity, right? Where I identify. So because I felt that essence so real, I didn't just read it in a book. Someone wasn't trying to convince me and tell me. I felt it. I felt this is who I am with complete certainty. Now, just to be honest, a hair's width outside of that certainty is just the broken kind of sort of fragmented psyche. It's just right out there. So if I slide out, I can easily identify with my pain, my fear, my, lack of feeling worthy, and then we start identifying with those different parts of the psyche, and then it becomes really solid. It's hard to let go of that identity.
Yes. So we have an old saying, like it's probably from the 60s, right? Oh, okay. So yeah, I've started, so I'll finish, right? So the paper that people use for, you know that cigarettes, the slang for cigarette in the UK is fag.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I heard that.
So the slang for the paper that people use for rolling cigarettes, we call it fag paper, right? So what we say is you can't in this context, you can't put you can't fit a fag paper between the soul and the psychology, right? So it's thinner than a sheet of paper.
That's right.
It's thinner than a sheet of paper. It's that close, and I never heard it expressed as eloquently as that. That it's a hair's breadth. That would have been a nicer metaphor, wouldn't it? It's a hair's breadth between the two, instead of some potentially, sorry, transatlantic confusion. So, but I want to take you back. You said it's a feeling. You felt it. Okay. So this is a feeling thing, not a knowing thing. It's as I'm looking, it's a feeling as a knowing thing. And the best metaphor that I always hear for this, that I always use when I get into the difference between a feeling and a knowing, is somebody tells you a joke. You say, that's funny, right? That's knowing, right? Somebody tells you a joke and you laugh. That's feeling.
Yeah. You can see that.
And I think for me, it's the other thing I'm kind of seeing on this is that the knowing there's levels of knowing. I'm playing with this for my book at the moment. So the first, we're talking about different levels of insight. So the first thing, before we can feel it, we have to kind of see it, right? Or maybe we don't sometimes. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. For me, it's been a seeing thing, I would guess, because of the way we've gone different routes to the same thing. So I'm guessing the way that you've gone will be more of a feeling route, because it's been all this stuff that you've done. For me, it's been more of a seeing route. Okay. And so the seeing, the insight happens in stages. So first you get a glimmer, and then it's gone, like a glimmer of an insight. Then there's a different sort of seeing when you see something out of the corner of your eye, and you lock onto it, and then you see it. You kind of like see it fully. But we're seeing with our eyes, and then we're kind of believing in our brain, and then we're feeling in our heart, and then we're getting something as an embodied understanding, which is feeling it in the depth of our soul. That's kind of how I see it. What about you? How do you see it?
Yeah, well, I feel like my experience with meeting with that essence was similar in some ways. It was it was a big experience first, like a breaking through, but then it was just kind of a lot of coming and going, like fleeting, kind of that glimmer word you used, right? And then little by little, I had to, purposefully connect, look at it, feel it. And then it started to take a deeper root inside of me. And I mean, that root is already there, but again, it's bringing my conscious awareness to the root.
Beautiful.
And also that root got much stronger when I could feel the other parts. So this is a big part of the second part of my book, and why I really talk about those self-mastery steps, because what I realized was meeting with my true self, my essence, my soul was one thing, but I needed to be able to navigate through the inner fragmented, so-called crazy, as I kind of called it, not to insult myself, but such wild waves and turbulent ups and downs of my inner world. I needed to start to be able to sift through them and be like, oh, here's a feeling, and hey, guess what? You're not me. Oh, and here's a belief, and you're not me. And here's an emotion that's controlling me my whole life and even still grips me now, but I know it's not me. And every single time I could separate myself from those pieces and recognize them for what they were, my soul power was getting stronger. The root was getting deeper, because the soul gets stronger. The soul is the one, right? When I'm identifying with my soul, I have this emotion, but this emotion is not me. So it's, again, getting really clear about my identity. And through that, the feeling, the connection was getting stronger and deeper, and I became more empowered. And I think another word here that we need to talk about is beliefs, right? Because we have all these old beliefs, right? Oh, I'm not good enough, I'm unwanted, I'm unlovable. And then they make us emotional, and then they make our thoughts spin, and sometimes they make us sick. But then when the feeling was rooted, there's like another belief that happens there, right? It's kind of beyond a mental belief, like, oh, you told me that, do I believe you or not? It's like a belief with your whole body. I know who I am. This is who I am. This is where I came from. This is where I'm going. This is the very fibers of my being. This is the unbreakable, untarnished me. That belief starts to heal the wounded beliefs.
Yeah, beautiful. So the second part of the book is kind of the roadmap to that.
Yes and no. The second part of the book, I lay out the self-mastery steps that I used for managing the inner world so that I could nurture and grow my true self. I experienced the deep meeting with my soul through a workshop called Finding My True Self. I was just lucky to come across that. And I had one big thunderbolt and lightning experience there. And then the second part of the book is those 8 steps where I practiced. So they're part of brain education, which is really what I teach. But they're like a breakdown of brain education, and they're what I have focused on a lot with my students over the years, because I found many people, that's what they're aching for. They kind of have a sense that they have an essence in there, that they have a pure soul in there, but they don't know how to manage the inner landscape so that they can keep reconnecting. It's confusing. It's like another whole world. Yeah. We kind of got it down how to live in the outer world, but we don't necessarily know how to navigate our inner world. So those 8 steps give processing tools, what I call processing tools, to keep navigating through and keep finding your way back to that essence again.
Yeah. Stunning. So what, back to, this has all been going along parallel with the relationship growing with Kate.
Yes. I think I joined the Body and Brain Center and started practicing brain education 1 year after meeting with her. So, and it's kind of because I was completely unraveled, and I thought I was losing my mind a little bit, to be honest with you. I couldn't see where I was headed. I was just losing controllability of my thoughts and my emotions completely. So I sought out, I need some kind of healing. Maybe I'll do yoga, but it just opened a door to so much more. And then, yeah, I just became, a very diligent practitioner from that moment till now. And it's what helped me navigate. While I was learning how to navigate my inner world, I was learning how to navigate my relationship with my birth mother.
Yeah.
It was critical to that. I don't think that I would have been able to maintain a relationship the way that we have in this kind of as sort of smooth. I mean, it was not all smooth. There's bumps along the way, but to the best of my ability, I've worked through things alongside with maintaining that relationship and trying to have healing and reconciliation with her too.
Yeah. So I think I wasn't sure why I asked that question, but it came from somewhere, some wisdom that's got nothing to do with me, right? But what we're talking about here is parallel tracks, the inner world, and the outer world. Because and why that strikes me is because I'm normally a consecutive sort of a guy. You know what I mean? It's one thing, then the next, not alongside each other. Consecutive. Rather, I think the word is concurrent. You're doing both side by side. You kind of like both side by side. And can you give us I'm not a theory guy. I'm an example guy. So can you give us an example guy where something where these two inner and outer work places have come in, the inner work in a relationship with your untarnished soul and your relationship with Kate have kind of like come together or bumped up against each other, or something that's maybe fresher, a learning that you've had is fresher. I don't know. Can you put those two things into context?
I can try. There's been many examples along the way. I don't know if this is going to be enough of an example for you, but there's been many examples along the way where I was spending time with Kate and she would just say something, nothing. She's just talking. She's just being herself, right? And then I just die on the inside, right? And I call it the hole in my, it comes from a beautiful poem called Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. If you, by forgetting the name of the writer now, but anyway, she talks about a hole in my sidewalk. You would love that poem, Simon. You would love it. She talks about having a hole, falling into the hole in your sidewalk. I would fall into the hole in my sidewalk, like straight to the bottom. And even Kate would recognize it. She'd be like, where did you just go? Suddenly I'd be just dark and just I'd become so insecure, and that I could hardly even continue the conversation. There was not, like, what she said didn't necessarily call for that, and I couldn't handle it. I was just way oversensitive, and that I would have to go back to my house, my world, and do so much inner work. What is that? What happened to me? Where did I go? What is this feeling? And sometimes I would just literally stay in it for years, working through a sense of victimization, a blame. Oh, maybe she was talking about her sons, and I felt, you care about them more than me. You don't love me. There was always voices like that. You give more to that. There was always an unreliable narrator. I like that. I'm going to use that from now on. Quick to throw me down that hole. That was the beginning. And it was so hard. I mean, then you come back and you're kind of like, feels like a bad relationship, right? Like, I think I need to break up here. This isn't working for me, right? That would be one response to that kind of feeling, to coming home and feeling so emotionally jarred and hurt. But then, no, like, I'm not going to break up with my biological mother. I want to work through this here. I want to heal. So the healing, I cannot do healing with her. We try to have conversations sometimes, but she's got her own hurt, you know, she's got her own perspectives. She's got her own life struggle. So after those so-called attempts to reconcile, things would be more complicated. So I realized I need to do it inside of me. So I would go and process and feel in and feel in. And what I started to do is just come to accept all these different parts of me. And as we just said earlier, recognize, you know what, it's not me either. I was just in a storm of feeling like that was me for 2 years. And then suddenly the storm clears and I realized it wasn't me after all. And oh, my untarnished soul is still here. And I'm alive again. And then it seemed like each time that would happen, I would be brighter and more confident, and some deep trust from inside was growing, so that now if I see Kate, there's none of that. There's no more falling into the hole. Every once in a while, the sidewalk opens and calls me. And then I say, no, I'm not going there. Everything is okay. I know who I am. So, you know, even my recent visit with her, it was filled with positivity. There was confidence on my end, and then her recognizing my change. So she's been she can really see the shift in me over all these years, and that's great because that opens up new healthy conversation for us. And now I can just love her, and instead of becoming deaf, dumb, and blind by something through my own pain, I can just love her completely for who she is and enjoy her so much more each moment. And I feel a much deeper appreciation. So that's not like a specific example, but does that give you a picture of what I'm talking about?
Yes. And there's an incredible profundity in that. I can just love her, you know, like you're going 10 to the dozen here, and I'm thinking, where am I going to go next? What question I'm going to, and I'm lost, you know, I'm totally lost, right? So, here's one, right? So what is it that gets lost in thought? I'll tell you what gets lost in, well, I know I won't tell you. I'll ask you first. That's not really good. I'm supposed to be interviewing you, right? So what is it that gets lost in thought?
Well, you know, if I follow my thoughts, I think this is what you're asking me. If I follow my thoughts, I'm just filled with judgment and blame. So thoughts, okay, if I just use the language of my practice for a moment, thoughts kick me outward. They make my consciousness go outward focus. So now I'm focused on Kate and what she did and what she didn't do. And well, she did that a few months ago. And she didn't say this to me, but she said it to him, right? I'm totally like stuck on her, my consciousness. What gets lost is me. I'm gone. I need to come back to me and feel me, because when I'm out, I'm full of blame. I don't feel my own worth and value as a living, breathing being. I've lost myself. I'm just in complete reaction mode to the outside world, person, or circumstance. So that's what happens when I follow my thoughts. So when I drop down into my body and into my heart and into my feeling, oh, here I am. And I'm okay right here, because the untarnished soul is always in there. Whether I can feel it shining or not at the moment, I can sense I'm right here and I'm okay. And I can pull back from my blame and my judgment. And I can just be with myself. Maybe I need to love myself at that moment. Maybe I need to forgive myself at that moment. Maybe I just need to self-soothe a little and tell myself everything's okay. I need something. But when I'm lost in my thoughts, I can't feel what I need. So I just become reactive.
Yeah. Wow. Brilliant. I'm going to go a bit psychological here, and then I'm going to in case anybody, well, it's still listening now, you know, like they probably, you know, and then I jump back into some spiritual thing. So yeah, I remember, as you were saying, look, I love the looking out stuff. Yeah, so we're looking for the outside world to make us happy, aren't we? Or the outside worlds to change. You said something about that when we spoke last time, right? And how many adoptees, me included, sometimes, often, frequently, we're waiting for the world to change. Like, how nuts is that? How long are we going to be waiting?
Yeah.
How long are we going to be waiting if we're waiting for the world to change? That's, like waiting for the world to think that adoptees aren't weird, waiting for the records to change, waiting for all this stuff. Like we're putting our happiness on hold. Like I've done that. I do that sometimes. I'm not Buddha, right? Do you know what I mean? But looking out, that's so it's so simple. Looking out, yes, we are lost looking out. I'm going to break that down into this psychological thing that I heard from a coach I had years ago, a business coach. So she had the metaphor is above or below the line, right? And above the line is good, below the line is bad.
Okay.
Essentially, right? Okay. So above the line, you've got an oar, like an oar in a rowing boat. For O for ownership.
Okay.
A for accountability. Okay. And R for responsibility. Ownership, accountability, responsibility. All good things, right? Who doesn't want to do more of that, right? Yes. Then below the line, we've got bed, right? So, I'm thinking of a depressed person taking to their bed, right? I'm thinking of me as a teenager not wanting to get up, right? We're in bed. Blame, excuses, and denial. Who wants to do that? Ooh, no, we don't want any of that, right? Yeah. So that's. But so that aside, apologies for going a bit psychological there. Right. But the other thing that you said was, when I asked you the question, what gets lost in thought? And you said it, actually, you gave us loads of stuff, but the one that you said, me, right? It's us that gets, it's the essence of who we are. The untarnished soul is lost in thought. The untarnished soul is lost in our beliefs, especially our self-limiting beliefs. The untarnished soul is lost in our psychology. Have you heard of endarkenment?
No. Is that the opposite of enlightenment?
Well, I like it. It's not quite. But it's a different take on it. It's spinning it around. I do remember listening to your audio. You used a metaphor similar to this, right? So it's if we are I want to be enlightened, right? Okay, so what do I need to do? Okay, well, you need to see your untarnished soul. Well, so how do I do that? It takes us further away from it. So the idea of enlightenment and this great thing. Oh, right, it's I've got to go to Nepal. I've got to go sit with the Dalai Lama. I've got to go on a journey. It's a bit weird. It doesn't really fit with Western values. It's all a bit exotic. I need to hang around in an ashram. Tie a sheet around my belly, lose a bit of weight. Shave my head, right? Drink water, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Got to become Indian, basically. So that's kind of. But endarkenment, it starts with the idea, and so the metaphor is that we are the sun. Yes. Okay? We're the sun in the sky, yes. And the clouds go in front of us, and the world becomes darker. It's endarkenment. Yeah. And it's and so the sun is also a metaphor for who we truly are. It's a metaphor for the untarnished soul. And then I don't know, it makes all perfect sense in my head, but I might be mixing too many metaphors, right? The primal wound endarkens
Mm-hmm.
the sun.
Yeah,
Our like beliefs endarken the sun. Our psychology endarkens the sun, but it doesn't change who we are. It just gets in the way. It veils it like a lampshade veils a light bulb.
Yeah. It's just like clouds covering the sun, but the sun is always shining in the center of the sky. Like deep in the center of the solar system, the sun is shining.
Yeah. The clouds don't tarnish.
No, they don't tarnish it.
They don't tarnish the sun.
Right. They cover it. They cover it.
Yeah.
So this is endarkenment when it gets covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do you like it?
No, I do like it. And I want to back up for a moment and just say,
go for it.
Another big important part of this process, which is was not easy for me, and I see it as a struggle with my students, is facing those clouds, right? Facing that endarkenment. Or when you use the word, when you talked about bed, admitting my bed behavior, my blame, my excuses, and my denial. Really, we have to face those clouds, right? So if we continue with that metaphor, the clouds cover the sun, it's raining, it's storming, we're just depressed, we're sad, we're hiding from it, we're running from it, we want to go in the bed, we want to close the shade, like we just want it to go away, right? Yeah. Like you said, waiting for the sun to come back out, waiting for the world to change, waiting for my biological mother to change, waiting for somebody to change so that I can be happy. But actually, our empowerment comes when we come out and we face those clouds and we take a good look, and maybe we even get in an airplane and we go up and we start to go up close to them because we want to get near them. We really want to face them. And then what happens? We start to go through them because they're just mist. They're not stone. We can pass through them. And then eventually we see, oh, the sun was always shining right there. So that facing the clouds, facing the bed behavior is part of being able to stay in the or it's part of being able to bring my consciousness back to the untarnished self that is there. So this is really important. I think this is like 90%, honestly, kind of 90% of the work. 10% is realizing who I am. And the other 90% is actually realizing who I am not. And that I get consumed by that I fall into traps of that wave washes over me and controls me often. And admitting it to myself with no self-blame or shame. It's okay. It's normal. It's the ego. It's the way that it goes. But this is not who I am. This is 90% of my effort was that process. So, yes. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think it's a beautiful place to end.
Yeah.
Apart from telling you about another great person whose name begins with D, a guy called Dominic, and I was thinking about Dominic as you were talking about the rain. So Dominic was a lad in my scout group at school scout troop thing, and we were on scout camp, and it was absolutely tipping it down with rain. And Dominic went outside with just his, like, in his jeans and like a cotton jacket, not a waterproof jacket, and he sat outside in the rain reading the Beano for 2 hours. Right? Yeah, we're brought up on this idea that there's a thing called miserable weather.
Right. That's right.
And that's part, you know, like, we don't want to face the miserable weather, and we don't want to face the miserable internal weather.
That's right.
But as you say, the clouds aren't made of stone. We're not, as we climb the ladder of consciousness, we're not, when we run into those clouds, we're not going to get a sore head.
That's right.
We're not going to bump our head.
Scary. That's right. It's scary. But then when you get real close, it's more scary when you're far, right? And you're approaching. But when you get really close, you start to feel, hey, I can put my hand through this thing. I can put my whole body, I can get to the other side of this.
Yeah.
You stop being afraid of your own inner layers. And that's also hugely healing and empowering.
Indeed. And people say to me, oh, you're a bit Pollyanna-ish, Simon. You're a bit, you know, like I still feel down, but I used to get really down about feeling down.
Right.
And now I don't. So it's like it still gets me, but it still gets me. Realizing, feeling me as an untarnished soul does not mean that I never feel bad.
Yes, that's right. Me too. And then it gets more comfortable. I have everything inside. So some days are like this and some moments are like that. But knowing that I have everything, and I talk about this in the book too, and then I can choose. It just took me a long time to access my own power of choosing. It doesn't mean I don't go through those storms, but knowing that my soul is there and then practicing, just practicing. It's a lot of practice. I heard someone say recently on a podcast, self-care is a full-time job. I feel like self-development and growth is also kind of a full-time job. It's a lot of continuous practice with your day-to-day feelings, just feeling it, allowing it, and choosing who I am. That's been my process.
Brilliant. So check out the book. And I would especially like, you know, because Danielle narrates the audiobook. So hopefully by the time the podcast goes out, I will check to make sure that it's kind of the podcast. So I would definitely check because she narrates it, and it gives it so much more depth. It gives it so much more vitality. Like listening, I need the tone. The tone does the work for me. That the written word doesn't do for some reason. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Danielle. This has been beautiful, and I hope you enjoyed it too, listeners. And we'll speak to you again very soon. Bye-bye.